The alarm blares at 6 a.m. Outside, it is pitch black. Inside the room, a 16-year-old struggles to rise from the depths of a sleep that finally arrived only 4 hours ago. This is not a scene of occasional negligence. It is the daily reality for millions of adolescents worldwide. For 5 days a week, they operate in a state of chronic circadian misalignment, a phenomenon researchers have termed social jet lag. Then comes Saturday. The alarm is silenced, the curtains remain drawn, and the teenager sleeps until noon, banking 12 hours of slumber in a desperate attempt to repay a debt accumulated over the school week. For decades, sleep hygienists and pediatricians have preached a singular gospel, which is consistency. They urged parents to ensure their teens wake up at the same time every day, warning that sleeping in on weekends would only further confuse the body clock and make Monday mornings even more treacherous. It was a logical directive grounded in the mechanics of adult circadian rhythms. However, a new wave of research, spearheaded by landmark studies in 2024 and 2025, has upended this traditional wisdom. We are discovering that for the developing adolescent brain, the rules of chronobiology are fundamentally different. Recent findings suggest that weekend recovery sleep is not merely a sign of laziness or poor discipline, but acts as a critical biological buffer, a neuroprotective mechanism that significantly lowers the risk of depression and suicidal ideation in teens. To understand this paradigm shift, we first need to look at the invisible epidemic known as the Great Sleep Recession. If you walked into a high school classroom today, you would be looking at a room full of people suffering from clinically significant sleep deprivation. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and similar global health bodies consistently report that fewer than 30% of high school students get the recommended 8 to 10 hours of sleep. The vast majority average between 6 and 7 hours, with upperclassmen often surviving on 5. In the context of a developing brain, a loss of 2 hours of sleep per night is catastrophic. It is the equivalent of a neurological recession, where the resources needed for emotional regulation, memory consolidation, and impulse control are systematically stripped away. This is caused by a perfect storm of biology versus society. During puberty, adolescents experience a biological delay, known as a phase delay in their circadian rhythms. The secretion of melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep onset, shifts roughly 2 hours later. A child who was sleepy at 9 p.m. becomes a teenager who is physiologically alert until 11 p.m. or midnight. This is not a behavioral choice, but a biological imperative driven by the maturation of the reproductive and endocrine systems. Just as the teenager's body is pushing their wake-up time later to around 8 o'clock or 9 a.m., the school system pushes their wake-up time earlier. High schools often start between 7 o'clock and 8 a.m., requiring wake times that are biologically equivalent to 4 a.m. for an adult. Into this misalignment drops the digital accelerator. The teenage eye is more sensitive to light suppression of melatonin than the adult eye, meaning the blue light from screens amplifies the second wind of alertness they feel at night. The result is a weekly accumulation of sleep debt, where by Friday afternoon, the average teen may be missing 10 to 15 hours of necessary sleep. To understand why the weekend sleep-in is so controversial and potentially so vital, we must understand the two forces that regulate human sleep: Process S and Process C. Process S is the homeostatic sleep drive, essentially a pressure valve. From the moment we wake up, adenosine accumulates in the brain. The longer we are awake, the higher the pressure to sleep. When we sleep, adenosine is cleared, and the pressure resets. For teens during the school week, Process S is never fully resolved. They wake up with residual sleep pressure, and over 5 days, this pressure builds to dangerous levels, impairing cognitive function and emotional stability. The weekend binge sleep is an attempt by Process S to forcefully clear the backlog of adenosine. Opposing this is Process C, the circadian rhythm. This is the 24-hour internal clock located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus. It dictates when we want to sleep, independent of how tired we are. The conflict arises because the teen's Process C is naturally set to a late chronotype. When they sleep in on weekends, they are getting light exposure that signals morning at noon, pushing their Process C even later. This conflict between Process S needing recovery and Process C needing stability is the heart of the social jet lag debate. Social jet lag is quantified by calculating the difference in the midpoint of sleep on workdays versus free days. For example, if a teen sleeps from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. on weekdays, their midpoint is 2:30 a.m. If they sleep from 1 a.m. to 11 a.m. on weekends, their midpoint is 6 a.m. The social jet lag is 3.5 hours. For years, researchers viewed high social jet lag as a villain because it correlated with obesity and metabolic risk. However, in the realm of mental health, the story has taken a dramatic turn with the discovery of the weekend recovery paradox. In a groundbreaking study published in the Journal of Affective Disorders and corroborated by research from the University of Oregon in 2026, researchers analyzed data from thousands of adolescents. They found a startling correlation. Teens who engaged in weekend catch-up sleep had a significantly lower risk of depression. Specifically, the data indicated a 41% reduction in depressive symptoms for those who utilized the weekend to recover, compared to those who maintained a short, consistent sleep schedule, or those who were prevented from sleeping in. Why is this the case? Depression in adolescence is often linked to chronic exhaustion and the inability of the brain to process emotional data. When a teen is sleep-deprived, the amygdala, the brain's emotional threat center, becomes hyperactive, while the prefrontal cortex, the logic center, disconnects. This leads to high emotional reactivity and low resilience. Weekend recovery sleep, while imperfect for the circadian rhythm, acts as a neurobiological rescue. It allows the brain to undergo the deep REM cycles and slow-wave sleep that are cut short during the week. It is during these prolonged sleep bouts that emotional memories are processed and defanged, reducing the cognitive load that leads to depressive rumination. The data on anxiety is more nuanced, showing a U-shaped curve. Moderate catch-up sleep of 1 to 2 hours is beneficial and reduces cortisol levels. However, extreme catch-up sleep of more than 3 hours can be associated with higher anxiety. This distinction is crucial because extreme catch-up sleep often signifies severe weekday deprivation. The anxiety observed in these teens may not be caused by the sleeping in itself, but rather by the sheer severity of the weekday exhaustion and the anticipatory stress of the upcoming week, often called the Sunday scaries. Perhaps the most critical finding relates to suicide prevention. Sleep disturbance is one of the strongest predictors of suicidal ideation, independent of depression diagnosis. Research focusing on adolescents with chronic conditions found that prolonged weekend catch-up sleep acted as a protective factor against suicidal thoughts. The mechanism is believed to be impulse control. Suicide is often an impulsive act in adolescence. Sleep deprivation erodes the brain's braking system or inhibition. By restoring prefrontal cortex function over the weekend, the teen regains a measure of cognitive control and perspective, potentially preventing a momentary crisis from becoming a tragedy. We must look under the hood of adolescent neurodevelopment to understand the stakes. The teenage brain is pruning synapses and myelinating pathways. In a well-rested brain, the prefrontal cortex sends inhibitory signals to the amygdala, effectively saying that a bad grade is annoying, but not the end of the world. In a sleep-deprived brain, this connection is severed. The amygdala runs unchecked, and the bad grade feels like a life-ending catastrophe. This explains mood swings often dismissed as hormonal but actually rooted in exhaustion. Furthermore, sleep loss impacts the striatum, the brain's reward center. Chronic deprivation leads to a blunted response to positive rewards. Teens don't feel as much joy from friends, hobbies, or food. This is the biological basis of anhedonia, the loss of interest in life, which is a core symptom of major depression. Weekend sleep recovery can resensitize the reward system, allowing the teen to feel joy again. The medical community is currently navigating a shift in guidelines. The old school of behavioral sleep medicine emphasized that consistency strengthens the clock. The new school of adolescent psychiatry argues that if the kid is exhausted, let them sleep, because the immediate risk of a mental health crisis from exhaustion outweighs the risk of circadian drift. The verdict is that for adolescents, quantity seems to trump consistency when the deficit is severe. While consistency is the ideal, it is currently impossible for most teens due to school start times. In this imperfect environment, denying recovery sleep is akin to denying a starving person a feast, because regular meals are better. However, there is a limit. Sleeping until 3 p.m. is likely counterproductive because it pushes the sleep drive so late that the teen cannot sleep until 2 a.m. Sunday night. This brings us to practical strategies for parents and teens known as the anchor sleep technique. Instead of letting the wake-up time drift completely, use an anchor approach. Allow the teen to sleep in, but cap the drift at 2 to 3 hours. If they wake up at 6:30 a.m. for school, set a soft limit of 9:30 a.m. or 10 a.m. on weekends. This provides 3 hours of extra sleep, a significant recovery, without pushing the circadian rhythm into a completely different time zone. If the teen is still exhausted after waking up at 10 a.m., encourage the napping loophole, a mid-afternoon nap around 2 p.m. for 90 minutes. A nap relieves homeostatic pressure without resetting the circadian clock as drastically as sleeping in until the afternoon does. The danger of sleeping in is missing the morning light that resets the brain. The hack here is that if the teen sleeps until 10 a.m. on Sunday, they must immediately get bright light exposure upon waking to signal the suprachiasmatic nucleus that the day has begun. Finally, the Sunday night protocol involves using a small dose of melatonin, roughly 0.5 to 1 milligram, taken 2 hours before the desired sleep time to help pull the clock back, alongside strict avoidance of screens 90 minutes before bed. We cannot talk about this without addressing the role of schools in society. The scientific consensus is overwhelming that high schools should not start before 8:30 a.m. Districts that have moved start times later have seen reductions in car accidents among teen drivers, improved SAT scores, and lower rates of depression and suicide attempts. The resistance to this change is logistical, involving bus schedules and sports practices, not biological. Until systemic change happens, weekend recovery sleep remains the primary coping mechanism for families. It is important to know when to worry. While catching up on sleep is protective, there are signs that sleep patterns are shifting from recovery to pathology. These include social withdrawal, where the teen uses sleep to avoid interaction, circadian reversal, where they are awake all night and sleep all day, or hypersomnia, where the teen sleeps more than 12 hours and still reports exhaustion, which may indicate medical issues like depression or narcolepsy. In conclusion, for years we have treated sleep as a variable that can be traded for study time or social time, and we have treated the weekend lie-in as a bad habit. The science of chronobiology now tells us a different story. For the modern adolescent caught in the crossfire of biological maturation and societal rigidity, weekend recovery sleep is a lifeline. It is the brain's attempt to heal and a biological buffer against depression and anxiety. While we strive for the ideal world of later school starts, we must accept the current reality with compassion. If your teenager is sleeping until 11 a.m. on a Saturday, do not view it as laziness. View it as neuroprotection. Their brain is knitting itself back together, processing the emotions of the week, and building the resilience they will need to face the alarm clock on Monday morning. In the high-stakes game of adolescent mental health, sleep is the foundation, and sometimes the best thing we can do is simply let them rest.